All right, Jonathan, welcome to the Visionary Life podcast. You are the founder of the Personal Trainer Development Center, and you are the author of multiple best selling books for personal trainers. In addition, you founded the first ever online certification for fitness trainers, which is called the Online Trainer Academy. And since then, it's been tested by over 35,000 people, which is truly incredible. So, first off, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, what's up? It'll be good to get to know you a little bit better too.
Awesome. So, first things first, I have some inclination that you have the travel bug. So, my first question to you is, have you been able to travel and maintain this adventurous lifestyle since COVID hit? Because we are still in the midst of this never ending pandemic. So, where in the world are you?
That's right. I'm in a little town in Mexico right now called Sayulita, which is on the west coast, about 45 minutes south of Puerto Vallarta. And I mean, have I been able to travel this year? No, my travel got canceled like everybody else. I had lots of trips and stuff planned, but it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, I had a lot of speaking planned. I had a lot of travel. We were going to put on our own conference. We had a lot of stuff planned, and it all got canned. And I'm not going to plan it next year or the next year because you know what? I kind of like not doing it. And so for somebody like me who, I wouldn't say that I don't like people, but I certainly like people in small doses. You know, I'm very much an introvert, and for anybody who's an introvert, like I'm cool being around people, but introverts are best described as people who wake up every morning with 5 coins, and every interaction that we have, we give a coin away, and then when all the coins are gone, we got to be by ourselves a little bit and replenish. And so that's me, and I've really enjoyed having a lot more family time. I've really enjoyed having a lot more just thinking time, slow time, and feel like I've thrived in that. But it was kind of tough to get over like a hump of, being still and feeling like I need to check my phone every second and just forcing myself. It's like, no, I'm going to go to a notebook. No, I'm going to always have a book. Like I've got books in every corner of my house because those like for anybody, I've got a 3-year-old. So like for anybody who's got a kid, like those in between times are really easy to just check in on Facebook or whatever, right? And so I just like have a different book in like every corner of where I am so that I can always just like grab a book and read for like 2 minutes.
I
So it's
love
been
that.
good.
It reminds me of there's a James Clear book, and he talks about having a visual cue for the habits you want to incorporate. So it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. Like if you're trying to unlearn just grabbing your phone and scrolling Facebook every time you have a free minute, you actually have to set the books up in front of you and give yourself that visual stimulation of like, oh, the book is there too, as well as my phone. So now I can make a conscious choice. So I think that's actually a
But
really good high performance tip for anyone trying to get off Instagram and stop the mindless scroll. So
yes.
let's take your journey back a little bit as far as we need to go, because I'd love to hear the origin story of how the idea to build out the personal trainer development center actually came to be. So, like, when does that light bulb moment go off, or what is that piece of the journey? What does it look like?
There's no light bulb moment. Anybody who's ever built something, like anybody who tells you that there's a light bulb moment and it was like a master plan is either lying or disillusioned. Like we're so good as humans at post-rationalizing what actually happened and deceiving ourselves and smoothing out the messy middle that trying to like, oh, was there this light? No, I mean, I was a personal trainer. I was a personal trainer for 8 years. I always thought, like any good Jewish boy, I was going to become a doctor after university. Decided to become a personal trainer before I went back to medical school or post grad, and just kind of enjoyed it. But then hit a point that a lot of personal trainers hit, where I was 23 years old. I was maxed out. I was charging as much as you could charge in Toronto, where I'm from. I was managing a small group of trainers. It's about 10 of us at the club that I was at. And I was in charge of like their onboarding and in-service education and stuff like that. And then I was earning a commission from my overload of other clients to other trainers. So I was like, there wasn't much that I could do. And the catalytic point for me was I was playing ice hockey at night, again, token Canadian story, and got tripped, strained my hamstring, and was 2 weeks off of my feet. Like for anybody else, it's like, you know, you hurt your hamstring, whatever, it sucks. For a personal trainer, that means 2 weeks of no income. And that was the point to me where I said, okay, well, if this is what my life is going to be like, that's not okay. I am going to get sick. I am going to want to take time off. I'm going to want to have a family. I'm going to want to travel. Like clearly there needs to be something else. I don't know what that is, right? I don't think that I want to open up a gym, and I don't know what that is. So I went on a journey of just, this was before like you could just Google or get retargeted with ads about different income stream potentials. I mean, this is like 2008. And so I went to the bookstore, remember those? And I searched for any books on marketing, multiple streams of income, whatever it is, passive streams of income. And I wrote down their names, and then I walked across the street to the library and I checked out those books. And I just started reading. I was just searching for like something, some solution. And I eventually, I mean, I built 2 business plans for smoothie operations. Like this is the messy middle, right? I studied residential real estate investing for 6 months. Like I said, I was just searching. I didn't know what it was. I was just collecting information, open-ended information, which I think there needs to be more of, with no real direction. Knowing that I kind of had a problem, but didn't already assume that I knew what the solution was to that problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And came across this term called infopreneuring, which today is like obvious. It's like, yeah, you sell your information. But back again in 2008 was not obvious. It was this like underground thing. And so at the core of it all was write a book about something you know about. And then all of these income streams, right, appear. You can develop courses, you can speak, you have a mailing list, you can do affiliate promotions, you can do all this stuff, right? And so I wrote a book because I was so ignorant not to about personal training when I was 24 years old. I knew so little about why I shouldn't have written that book because I couldn't go on the internet and search for all of the things that I should do. That like I knew nothing about it. Like, how did I find my editor for the book? I literally went to the bookstore. I found every fitness book I could find, and I cold emailed the authors and I asked for their editors. Like that's how little I knew about what I shouldn't be doing. And so I just did it, which is again, I think another lesson. Perhaps we should know less about what we're trying to accomplish before we start. And so wrote a book, had a book, figured I needed to get people to read the book because I had no network. And so started publishing basically excerpts of the book on this new website that I had just built. I started a blog before I knew what the word blog meant. And then I was like, well, I don't have that many good ideas, but there's probably a lot of other people out there that have good ideas. Why don't I just bring their good ideas onto my website? And so then I started syndicating other people writing about personal training, basically articles that were already on the net. I just asked the author permission and paid them $50 to republish it on my website. And they were the sole author and stuff like that. And that was the Personal Trainer Development Center. Like I didn't have any products. I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. I was still training clients full time. I was doing this from 9:30 p.m. until 2 in the morning. And then I was waking up at 6 again for clients. That's how it all started.
Well, I think it's so refreshing to hear that you didn't really know what you were doing. You kind of just started it as almost like a, side hustle, as people would call it in 2020. But it's not like you sat in a cave for 5 years and wrote this elaborate business plan and knew exactly what your online trainer academy
Right.
would look like. But I bet that there are people who look at the business that you have now and think, oh, this must have been his life's purpose or his calling. And they assume that maybe there was no messy middle and that you got that light bulb moment. So I think what I really want to double tap on there, and what I love that you shared, is that you had to do a lot of searching and reading different books and seeing what piqued your interest. This didn't all just become a download one day when you decided, oh, like I'm injured, I can't personal train, what am I going to do next? Oh, I have this brilliant, $1 million idea. It never works that way, but yet I think there are a
Yeah.
lot of people listening who are sitting at home watching Netflix, waiting for that epiphany and thinking that they can go from zero to massive business without encountering a lot of these hiccups and a lot of these uncertainties. So I love that you shared that part of your journey, that, there was a time when you were just trying to find, what is this thing that I can move on to next with no certainty of whether it would succeed or not.
Yeah. I mean, look, odds are that anybody who's in a position that you feel like you aspire to get to has worked way harder for way longer and gone through way more crap than you could ever imagine and that you'll ever see. Way more. Like, it's not even close. You see such a tiny snippet of what actually goes on if you're looking. And that's why it's so easy to get jealous, right? Because you're comparing yourself. You're comparing all of your experiences, including your bloopers, to everybody else's highlights. And you're comparing your chapter 1 to other people's chapter 12, not realizing that they too at one point had a chapter 1. They just happened to start, before you did. And that's, there are all these stories we tell ourselves, right? And it's really important to kind of get away from that. I love, one of my favorite terms is this term called Sonder, S-O-N-D-E-R. I think it's one of the most beautiful things to always keep in mind, which describes the phenomenon that every single person you meet and encounter every single day has a life just as unique, that is their own, as yours. And their experiences are just as unique as yours. And it's one of those things that I think is so beautiful, because it's intuitively, we all know this to be true, but it's so hard to keep that in mind.
Yep.
And get away from that, like lizard brain, amygdala, like worry filled brain of our head when our emotions take over.
Yeah, I know. We're so quick to judge, right? But we have no idea. And, reflecting on the conversation between two business owners, you never know what somebody else has gone through to get to where they are today. So love that you shared that. Now, you launched this blog and you said you were kind of getting different contributors. But at this point, you still hadn't launched your online certification. So at what point did the business transition from just kind of a passion project, a blog that people were contributing to, sharing resources? When did that become something that you're like, I think that there's something else here. I think I'm going to launch some sort of product and potentially monetize this website that I've created?
Well, so let me talk about why I think most people who do business do it backwards. It's a nice thing to say. A lot of people kind of pay lip service to being a customer-centric business. It's like a term that you hear as one of these sexy terms like abundance, but the reality of it is very few businesses are actually customer-centric, because customer-centric basically means that, to me, a customer-centric business means that you listen to your customers and you build what they need. Most businesses build something and then try to tell their people to buy it. Right? To me, that's backwards. And I happened upon this by accident. I didn't always know this. I did business backwards. I built a blog and a platform in a community with no idea what I was going to sell. No idea that I could even sell anything. I kind of knew that people were selling ebooks. That was like the extent of what I knew that they could sell. But I figured that, my population, my audience, personal trainers probably needed something. Like the industry still to this day isn't really doing that well. It's a really, really tough job. And so in 2012, I did a large scale survey. We ended up with just over 1 million data points. And I did 117, no, sorry, that was a different survey. I did 137 13-minute phone calls with our audience. Literally just got on the phone with anybody from our audience. And we now do a lot of very in-depth, we follow the jobs to be done framework, and we take customer research, and customer experience mapping unbelievably seriously. It was much less organized back then. But what I was able to do was I was able to drill down the problem into one sentence, which is all trainers a year or so in their career need to make a bit more in a bit less time with a bit better schedule. That's the problem, right? Okay, so what's the solution? You can't start to build a solution or even think about a solution until you've defined the problem and proven the problem. You may have some assumptions of what the problem is right now, but I can tell you you're probably wrong in at least one part of it. And that's not like anything against you, dear listener. That's that's just the case. That's just, we, in isolation, before we put out a product or a prototype of product, we never actually know how it's going to be used and what problem it solves, right? So you do all, so anyway, so I did all this research and basically said, okay, well, like online training, like adding online training kind of seems to solve this problem. Kind of checks all of the boxes. I don't really know anybody doing it though. Like there were some people doing online training back in 2012, but people were mailing them checks. They were sending like Excel spreadsheets, like it was pretty new. And so I built a business model from scratch, literally just like sat down in a notebook, built a business model, and then took 24 people through a beta version of it, 22 finished, turned that into the first ever course teaching online training business, which was at that point called 1K Extra, and then went through this process that we're still doing of just product development, iteration, and evolved that into the Online Trainer Academy certification in 2016. And we're actually coming out with version 4 of the Online Trainer Academy next month. And so how many total versions has this been through? I think something like 10 now. Hired the senior course developer from Yale University to do independent audit of it. Hired PhDs in distance course learning design. Like to one of your questions before was, how did I put together the curriculum? It's like, well, I didn't know how to put together a curriculum. But that's one of the beautiful things about the world we live in. I could literally hire the senior course developer from Yale University and get him to do an independent audit of the learning styles utilized in our curriculum and give suggestions of how to improve it. So I did it. I mean, like that's how you do anything these days, but you can only do that if you know what specific problems you have to solve. It's actually very easy to find to find experts and to hire them, but you can only do that if you've really worked to figure out what specific, like somebody to just like, help me make a course. It's not a question, right? You got to do the work first to say, what parts of this do I understand? What parts of it do I not understand? Where are the gaps? Where are the opportunities? Let me prioritize these gaps and opportunities. Okay, where are my holes? Who are the experts that can fill in these holes? Right? And then hire them to fill in those holes, not to give you a mocked up complete framework of how this thing works, because odds are that's not right for you. And you're still going to have to individualize it.
One thing I think that you said that I want to stop on is the fact that you hosted, I forget how many you said, these 13-minute phone calls, like 100 of them, more?
I've done multiple bouts of that. I did 137 that time. I did 117 another time. Our team now, I mean, I don't perform the phone calls because we've got like a lot of really in-depth, like I said, this jobs to be done is a brilliant framework, but it's really, really difficult to do. Like we hired a statistician, like it's really, really difficult to do. But when you do it, the insights are gold.
So what were you asking people on these phone calls? Like, so kind of going back to, you have the personal trainer development center, you're thinking about launching some type of program or course or certification. You decide.
I wasn't even thinking of launching anything.
You weren't even thinking. Okay. You were just trying to understand.
I wasn't even. Yeah, I was trying to understand my audience better. I had no idea. I mean, I figured that I would probably put together something for sale at one point, but it wasn't like I am going to create something. Let me figure out what I'm going to create. It was like, what are these people suffering from? Like, that's got to be first, right? So what did I ask him?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Like, this is so brilliant because most people jump right into the development of the product. And like you were saying, like they just build it and assume the people will come, but you kind of flip that on its head. So when you're hosting these calls, because I think this is advice that a lot of the listeners can benefit from. When you're hosting these calls, what are the types of questions you're asking? Like if someone listening has never hosted these exploration calls, what does that look like when you get on the phone with 137 people for 13 minutes?
At the beginning, it was, I just had like a spreadsheet and I just ran through the questions, and the questions were things like, what's your ultimate goal in the industry? What do you want to achieve? What's your biggest frustration in the industry? Right? What keeps you up at night? It's just questions like that.
Yep.
And what I found was there were a lot of things that people said that weren't actually, like, you got to learn to read between the lines, right? So a lot of people would say, oh, I hate that I have to post on social media all of the time. Okay, well, the obvious solution then would be to build a done for you content service. That doesn't solve the problem. The problem is not that they don't like posting on social media, right? The problem is that they feel overwhelmed at all of the things that they feel like they should be doing in order to get where they want to be. And they're diluting all of their efforts because they don't have any kind of focus. So building them a social media content service is actually exacerbating the problem. It's actually going to make things worse for them over the long. You might make a bit of money, but you're not going to be able to build something that turns into a multi-million-dollar business because you're not actually solving the problem, right? You're putting a Band-Aid on it. So you start to see patterns and you start to read between the lines. What we're looking for now when we do the interviews, and like I said, this is a bit more sophisticated, but we're basically asking people what pushed them away from an existing solution they're using, what pulled them towards whatever they're using now, and what habits are keeping them where they are right now. So, and really trying to get to that like point of change and not accepting vague answers ever. So if I want to know why you hired a personal trainer, oh, so can you just like when was it that you hired as personal trainer? Oh, I think it was back in the spring. Oh, do you remember what was going on that day? Right? Like, where were you? Who were you with? What did you see? What was that post? Who was that post by? Right? And you start to identify some real patterns, because what you will find out very quickly is that demographics are by and large useless. Psychographics are even by and large useless. What you find is that there are really serious patterns of buyers that kind of ignore all conventional rules. Like, you could have an African-American 40-year-old woman buy something for the exact same reason as an 18-year-old college guy. Yeah. And when you find out that reason, you can speak to that reason specifically, right? So we're trying to figure out stuff like that. But really, I mean, it all comes down to those fundamental questions, like, what do you want to achieve? Get specific with that. What frustrates you right now? Get specific with that. Yeah. That alone, irrelevant of everything else that I just said, will give you so much insight. And this is the hard work that very few people do. So many people, yeah. I mean, how many people listen here, like, put up your hand, if you're on the bus, or not if you're driving a car, if you're going for a walk or run or something, like, how many people have built something that they thought the world wanted and then released it into the world, and all of a sudden nobody wanted it? Like, that sucks. I know that feeling. I've done that. And it's because you made assumptions on what people wanted. You didn't actually check. You didn't build a system of prototypes, right? Minimum viable products as you were going. Literally, like a piece of paper, held it in front of them and said, would you buy this? Yes. Can I take a deposit? If I build this, I'm going to take $20 from you and I will give it to you. Yeah. Because, anybody who's ever launched something knows that all of a sudden your family and friends disappear the second you put it out into the world. And that's a hard thing to go through. Yeah. Over and over again.
Totally been through that. So you host all these discovery calls, 137 of them. And then you said you ran a beta program. So was this your way of compiling basically all of the tools and resources that you knew would get somebody from where they were feeling challenged? They told you what their goal was. And so did you just simply build a framework or a bridge that would get them on that path and on that journey, and then say, hey, I'm hosting this beta thing, put a credit card on the line and let's test this thing out because you told me this was your problem? Was that kind of how the next step looked?
Basically. Yeah, I mean, the beautiful thing about these interviews are these are all the people who are going to buy it. Hey, if I can solve your problem, would you be interested in hearing more about it? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put you on the list. right? And then you reach out to them first, give them an opportunity to get into the beta program before anybody else. And give like a hard deadline for that. I mean, that's how I launch every program with multiple beta programs.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years into my business, we launched a fitness coaching service. We're going into our third beta group. I mean, our beta groups are 100 people at $500 a pop, but they're still a beta group.
Yeah.
Right. And this is us testing what we have. And so basically all that you need in order to launch a beta group is what you think the marketing appeal is. And you make a promise of the results. Nobody really cares what's in it. Nobody ever, if you're able to sell the results and the problem good enough, nobody ever cares what's in it. The only reason that people care, that people ask you what's in a thing, is because you haven't convinced them as to the benefits of the thing and why they need it. And so they ask you what's in it because that's the easiest question to ask when they're not sold on it. If you actually sell somebody on it, they're never going to ask you what's in it. So that's actually a good like rule of thumb, like heuristic. If you're selling something, if you get a lot of people asking you what's in it before buying, you need to figure out how to position your thing better. And so I mean, you asked me before, or you told me that you wanted to talk about before we got on this call, like basically my top marketing strategy. It's the same as it's always been. It's the same for the last 10 years, which is include people in your work. Figure out a way to include as many of the people who could potentially buy your thing in the process of developing that thing. So when I wanted to come out with a book, for example, I created a Facebook group about how I was writing and how I was going to market the book. Didn't actually have much to do with the subject matter of the book, but now I have hundreds of people following along with the process of me writing a book. I'm updating them on the chapters. I'm talking about what I'm writing about, whatever it is. Now I have all these people who are on the book launch team when I go out to launch the book. Well, now this book is the #1 marketing book in the world for the week that it came out, right? Because all of these people are now a part of it. That's the same with every program that we put out. Don't hide your idea. It's not that special. I got news for you. Nothing you are doing is unique or special or hasn't been done before. It's execution that matters. And so put your idea out into the world, include people in the development of it, include people in beta groups of putting this thing out. And what you will find is that when this thing is eventually ready, which by the way, will take way longer than you ever think that it will, then you're going to have an avid group of people who've been following it along. You don't need to market to because they already know all about it. Basically saying, when can we buy this? When can we buy this? When can we buy this? Like I always say to people, if you start marketing something when it's ready, you're 4 to 6 months too late.
And I think that's a common misconception, is that, oh, I should go hide in my cave, my creation cave, until everything is ready, until everything is perfect. And then I'll tell my friends and family, and then I'll let people know that it's live. But like you said, like if you do that and you just pop out one day and say, by the way, I built this amazing online certification, nobody's listening. They have not been included in the journey. You're bombarding them with a message that they weren't expecting. So I love that you do try to include your prospective dream clients in the process, because they're the
what do you think leads to people doing that? Like, why do you think people do that? Because even people who hear us talking about it right now are still going to do that. So why do you think that is?
I personally think it's self-doubt and limiting beliefs, because as soon as you start putting something out there, as soon as you tell your partner, your mom, your friend, or you tell the world, I'm working on something, it becomes so real. And most people, I think, they've let themselves down so many times in life that they're afraid, if they say it out loud or if they start including people in this process or they launch a beta group, they are going to let themselves down one more time, because they're not going to follow through and they don't do what they say they're going to do. It's just normal. It's like people book coffee dates. It's like, hey, let's meet up. And then last minute they cancel. There's this lack of follow through, I think, is an issue. And I don't know why that is such a common trait these days, but I think a way to protect ourselves from letting ourselves down is to keep it secret until it's perfect. But we know that it's never going to be perfect. So I think that's why somebody would not include the community in the journey.
Mhm.
What do you think? Do you have a different perspective on like, why wouldn't you just share your ideas with the world and say, I think I see this problem. I'm going to try and create something to solve it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I have a really hard time. I've had to like, I don't know, I don't really feel feelings too much. So I kind of had to teach myself what emotion was and what emotional intelligence was, and like, teach myself what empathy was in a textbook, because I know that it's really important. And I'm the type of guy, I mean, my first ever speaking engagement was just to like 500 people randomly. Like I never had any qualms about any of that. And I don't quite get why. I mean, I get that other people get like stage fright and are afraid to speak. I'm just like, what? I'm just going to talk to you about stuff I know, right? Like, I'm not going to talk to you about stuff I don't know. I think a lot of the time when people are afraid to speak, they try to give talks on stuff perhaps they're not an expert in, maybe as part of it. But I don't know what the answer is, which is why I asked you, because it's certainly a problem. And it's a problem that I'm intellectually curious about. And I don't really have a good answer. So I liked yours.
Yeah. There might be an element too of imposter syndrome, right? People feel like, well, if I go speak on stage, then like who am I to be doing that? And they don't feel they've earned it.
Sure.
They don't have the right qualifications. But I think your ignorance
See,
isn't
my opinion is
like
like, well, yeah, like my opinion is like, if you don't want to listen, turn off. Like, you're on the internet, dude. Like, there are lots of other places you can go that are, all of them already, not all of them, a lot of them are way more exciting than I am. Like those moving pictures are way more exciting and interesting than me speaking to you and writing to you right now. So if you're not interested, dude, there's other stuff. I guess that's always like, I'm just gonna talk in my little corner here. If you want to listen, you
yeah.
can listen.
And I think that is like the type of confidence that we should all aspire to have. It's like, I don't care if you don't like me. Like, I'm going to say what I want. I'm going to go do something that I'm not perfect at. And I don't fear
Right.
judgment anymore because it's like, great, unfollow me. Don't buy my product. I don't care. But maybe
Well,
that's
I feel judgment. I would challenge you on that, because I think that there are three types of negative people on the internet.
okay.
There's haters, there's critics, and there's trolls.
Yep.
And I think how you respond to each of them is very, very important, right? A hater is somebody who is just bashful. I mean, they're illogical, you can usually find them because they're grammatically just like, it just makes no sense. Like it's clearly emotion driven, it's drivel, it's just nonsense. They're just hating. The only thing to do with them is just delete them from your page, block them, get them out of there. There's no good that can come with that. A troll is basically a hater who tries to be funny. So it's more or less the same thing. There are ways to respond to these people in a very creative way, basically not trying to argue with them, but trying to get more of your people on board by making them look really stupid. I don't actually agree with that so much, but you can do it. But then there's a critic, right? And a critic is very different, because critics are people who seem intelligent, right? Critic is somebody who writes well, who makes, it may not be points that you agree with, but they're still salient points. They're well thought out points. They're well articulated points, and they're challenging you. And I think it's really important to listen to critics, because I really want to listen and learn from really smart people who think something that I disagree with. I actually think that there's more that I can learn from them than anybody else. So I would first do a very quick assessment to say, okay, well, like, what camp do these people fit in? Doesn't mean that you necessarily need to change your focus and look at a critic, but Nassim Taleb has a really good heuristic. Nassim Taleb, like author of Anti-Fragile and Black Swan and a whole bunch of other really important books. has a heuristic that I really like, which is you are not allowed to take a side in an argument unless you can argue the other side better than the person you're debating.
Wow.
It's a pretty good rule of thumb. Basically, you're not allowed to argue a side unless you understand how the other side justifies their point.
It's a great life skill that I think a lot of people are putting up a wall right now and saying, well, I'm allowed to argue whatever I want.
You're allowed to argue. I don't have to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I should have the skills and I should have the awareness to recognize when it might be worth listening. Because if I'm wrong, I want to know, right? And people who disagree with me that are really intelligent fascinate me.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of, I think it's a Seth Godin quote, and he says, like, he doesn't really pay attention to the 1-star reviews on his books on Amazon because those are like the haters and the trolls that are basically out to bring the rating down. But he loves to sift through.
Or people who are like, I got my book and it was damaged. Like, sorry, man, you ordered a used copy on Amazon from somebody who resold it to you and it was damaged. Like, this is not an assessment of the book.
Or it's somebody saying this book is not at all what I wanted. And like, it's very personally driven. And it's like, okay, but you should have read the description or the overview of the book and realized it's not for you. I did not write it for you. So he doesn't look at those, but he will pay close attention to the 3 and the 4-star reviews because that's where the critics hang out. And that's where the people who are making constructive feedback saying, you know, I ordered this book because I had this problem. And the only thing was it didn't deliver on X, Y, and Z. And he'll look at those and go, okay, this is very important feedback. I can digest that, although it's a punch in the gut, but that's an important comment versus the trolls who are just, you know, trying to destroy his life online. So, you know, that's
well, and on the other side of the coin, figuring out like a hotel or resort or vacation to take or whatever on TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
To use that, or like a Yelp review or whatever, right? If you don't hate Yelp, which if you do, I totally understand. But reading the reviews, reading positive reviews usually doesn't lend you much insight to help you make any kind of decision of whether you want to eat at that place or attend that, whatever. But reading the negative reviews, like negative reviews have often driven me to stay at places because what one person finds negative is exactly what I'm looking for. For example, oh, there were all these kids around. It looked like the families were just having so much fun. All I wanted to do was drink and party and get girls. It's like, that's where I'm going to go with my 3-year-old, you know? It's like that 2-star review just sold this resort for me. I mean, that's an extreme example, but you will often find that in the negative reviews, what somebody else finds negative is actually exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's such
not cockroaches, but I stay in a lot of places in jungles, so not cockroaches.
So
scorpions or monkeys.
You're staying in a lot of places, you're in jungles. Like, what is your role within, like, now we're fast forwarding a little bit. What is your role within your company today? Like, where are you focusing a lot of your efforts? Is it in bringing new products to market? Are you still launching things? Are you just trying to refine what you already have? Like, what lights you up and what do you spend your time on these days?
I am maybe 2 to 5% involved in the business these days. But it was a journey that I took professionally. I think perhaps as a business owner, startup founder, whatever you want to call yourself, the journey to knowing yourself is probably the most valuable journey that you can take. I am really, really, really good at looking at a whole bunch of moving parts and figuring out ways that they fit together. I'm really, really good at identifying future opportunities in markets. And I've built the skill, and I've built the team to help me with the skill to prove or disprove those assumptions. So I used to just go on knee-jerk right, assumptions. So now, I mean, prove or disprove those assumptions. I am absolutely, abhorrently god awful at running things, like comically bad. Like my assistant literally needs to voice, like I finish at the gym every morning and I have a voice recording from my assistant telling me what I'm doing that day. Like I can't manage my own calendar even if I wanted to. I'm awful, 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 awful at running things. And so what do I do day to day is some big picture strategy, although less and less with the operational business, but identifying opportunities in the market. And I spend a lot of time reading a lot of books about a lot of things, because to me, single bodies of knowledge, single industries are inherently uninteresting and unvaluable. There's anything that you can learn easily and quickly has little to no value these days because anybody else can. Yeah. What has tremendous value is gathering this web of interconnected thoughts, insights, bodies of knowledge from all different fields and identifying potential crossovers. Mm-hmm. So most of what I do is read books, is talk to smart people, is think. And if I come up with one concept every 2 years, literally, that kind of brings it together. I mean, like right now, I can tell you that we got one. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see some very big things happening in the next few years from our company, because I know exactly where the fitness industry is going. I know how all of the people in that part of the industry, I understand right now how they've all missed the mark. They've overshot the market. They've misjudged the market, and they're not positioned to, literally, from commercial gyms to software platforms to education companies. They're all misplaced with where the fitness industry is going, and they're all going to be consolidated and or put out of business in the next 5 to 10 years because they have too much momentum going in the wrong direction. And we're building the tools to go in the right direction, right? So, figuring out that stuff takes a tremendous amount of time and freedom and flexibility that I'm really fortunate to have. And once we think that we have something, just asking a lot of questions, right? Working with a lot of very smart people who are very good at asking questions and building tests and proving assumptions. Mm-hmm. And then slowly, building the thing out, not, putting $500,000 or $1 million into something, but putting 50,000 at a time at each stage of it, proving it, pivoting if we need to, right, and moving from there. So that's kind of what I do day to day.
That's so cool that
I don't know. That's vague. That means nothing to anybody. Like, I apologize.
No, it does.
But
I think it's brilliant that at this stage you are like 90% of your time is towards dreaming, thinking, and like diving into wherever your curiosity leads you. Because like you said, it's your job at this point to be compiling different knowledge from different industries and, just like pulling all these strings together to see, okay, what is our next offer? And so do you
figuring out who we need and what we need to make those things happen. Yeah. And finding those people and selling them on that vision. Mm-hmm. It's a big job.
Do you identify with the word visionary? Like, would you call yourself the visionary of your company and you've got people integrating it and making it happen? Or do you identify with world or word for how you...
I don't identify with any word. I mean, it just kind of is. I mean, I guess so. I guess kind of that's what it is. But not so much with my company as it is right now from what everybody can see, but with where we're driving it for sure.
Now, before we kind of wrap things up here, I know many of our listeners are probably curious, like how you've been able to get your brand and the Personal Trainer Development Academy out in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I know that your marketing wheel probably has so many spokes coming off of it. And in the early days, you probably did tons of different things. But I just want to pause here and get some nuggets of wisdom from you. When it comes to enrolling those first 500 students or 1,000 students, I'm curious what marketing efforts worked better than you expected and that maybe you still deploy today? And is there some type of marketing that actually underperformed based on what you expected that you kind of want to debunk right here on this podcast? Because I think you are a marketer and you have a brilliant mind in terms of how you can reach the masses with an amazing product. So any insights on either of those, what worked or what underperformed that we can draw from?
Sure. Well, thank you. First off, what worked? I mean, I talked about beta groups, like call them founding client groups, founding customer groups.
Good word.
By far, yeah, by far, that's the most successful thing that we do. I mean, involving people early on for a few reasons. One is it allows you to make a really good, compelling offer, right? It allows you to make an offer and say, hey, at this point, this is going to cost X. Right now it costs Y. You get a discount because you're going to help me test drive it. And I want to showcase your success and I want you to help me and make it better. Think about all the things that does. It gives these people a reason to act now, right? So there's that built-in like logical scare, like not like bullcrap scarcity that a lot of people do, like actual like scarcity that makes sense. Yeah, right. This is only available for the next 5 people. It's like, you're a liar. And so there's that, but also it gives you permission to make it up as you go. It gives you permission to be imperfect. I think as whatever we want to call ourselves, you know, in my world, you know, as fitness professionals, it's really hard to admit that we don't know everything. And so this is a marketing offer that actually admits to your audience, it's like, hey, I don't know this all yet. Think about the power of that. I'm figuring this out. I'm pretty like I got something that's going to help you, but I'm figuring out all of the little pieces and I want you to be a part of that journey. I love that piece of it because that gives you permission to take action before you're ready. And it also gives you permission to get some paying customers, because if you just sit in your room, or what did you call it? Your planning cave. Yeah. If you just your creative cave. If you sit in your creative cave, it's going to take you a year and you're probably never going to do it.
No.
But if you have a customer waiting for that thing next week, you're going to get it done for next week. Yeah. It is that much of a difference. And so step 1 is actually to get a paying customer. Step 2 is to figure it out. And that's this idea of founding client beta group is the best way to do that. And then once you start getting people results, right, either you get people great results, which is fantastic, and then you have great results to market, and then you use those people to help you get other people, blah, blah, blah. Or you don't get people great results and you realize that your thing actually wasn't that good after all, which is great that you figured that out before you built the whole thing, isn't it? Yeah. And now you go ahead. In terms of what didn't work as well as we would have liked, I can tell you a really recent example. Yeah. We did, as our Black Friday promotion, we bundled together our certification with Precision Nutrition's level 1 certification, if anybody's heard of them. They're a nutrition certification company. And so we bundled together and we sold our 2 certifications together. And we created a don't pay anything for the rest of 2020, right? Your first payment of 12 is delayed until 2021. Basically, like, get your education, build your business, right? By the time the first payment comes out, you're going to be able to more than afford it because you've got 45 days, right? And you get all of this great education. And, you know, I mean, it performed fine. It didn't meet either of our expectations. It performed fine. But the lesson learned from that is the offer was too confusing. Yep. There were too many pieces of it. You need to have one offer, one reason for the offer that's very clear, very easy to understand. There were too many reasons to buy this. There were too many benefits. Quite frankly, I think the offer was too good.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't say that it fell flat. I mean, it did well just because the two companies are big enough that like
Yeah. You had
there's
enough
no reason
audience.
for it. But if you look at the conversion rates and stuff like that, I mean, you look at the number of people it got in front of that are like ideal for it, like it did not perform the way that it should have. And it was just too confusing. So simplify, simplify, simplify. Figure, like if there's one lesson to take from that, figure out why people need something.
Yeah.
The number one reason, I don't care about the number two, the number three, the number four, the number five, figure out the number one reason and focus in on that.
Yeah. And that kind of circles back to what you said at the beginning, which is like, if you can sum up the problem in one sentence, and like you did so clearly, you're like, they don't make enough money, that there's not enough time, and yeah, something else, like you've really got something good there. But I think what most people encounter is confusion on what they're solving, why people should buy from them. And if you, as the business owner, can't explain it in clear, concise terms, of
Right.
course your audience is confused. So it's like, I love one thing I'm gathering from you is that you're always dissecting like why something worked or why it didn't. You're not just saying, oh, well, like this launch didn't go well, on to the next. It's like, no, there's data in
Yeah.
there, and we're going to take the time to extract it before we just go make these same mistakes over and over. And, I'm guilty of it. I don't like data. I don't like looking at numbers. And it's not something I schedule into my calendar to see what are the conversion rates on my landing pages and why are people unsubscribing, things like that. But you're making me realize like that is a vital part to not keep making the same mistakes over and over.
So I'm the same as you. I see a number and I run so far through this brick wall
Same.
that I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is again, figure out what you thrive at, and as you grow your team, it's who you want to surround yourself with. So our director of marketing is literally a rocket scientist.
What?
Like he's a fitness professional turned rocket scientist. Because what do I need as a director of marketing? I don't need a strategist. I don't need a visionary. I need somebody who's a quant, who understands numbers and who likes marketing.
Wow.
Right? So he's a graduated rocket scientist.
Huh.
So so I don't look at numbers because I would again run through this brick wall. My face jumbles at them, but I recognize the importance of it, and so that was one of the things that I looked for. This is the value again of knowing yourself. Like it's not, there's no, especially for like a small business, you don't have the opportunity of hiring somebody for every single role, right? It doesn't exist. So how do you strategically build it up? Well, you need to prioritize. What's the one major thing you need now? What's the top priority?
Yeah.
Right? And what are the other things that that person is going to have to do? Even though it's not in their 5% or unique ability, or pick your management term, and build out like that.
What does your team look like today? Like, give us just a quick snapshot of like who's working with you and how many people are there, where around the world are they, just so we can get a picture of how you've grown your
We're mostly North America. We have an office in Toronto, but it's a remote company. There's 4 or 5 of us that work out of the office, but people can come and go whenever they want. Mostly North America, East Coast, West Coast. But actually, I shouldn't even say that anymore. We've got people all over the world now because we have a lot of coaches all over the world. General manager, who basically, because like I said, I can't run stuff, so runs the day-to-day. Director of marketing, creative director, editorial director, customer service, my assistant, various people in like project manager, head coach roles for the different projects. And then we have a host of coaches who support each project. So, and then like we have a staff writer as well. And like I say, staff writer, copywriter really, who's full-time on staff. And then we have a host of coaches for various programs who are really distributed around the world because we've got to hit different time zones.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere from Australia to Europe to North America to Namibia. We have coaches to work because we have a fitness coaching program, and we also have two business coaching programs. So coaches for that. We've got 2 levels of sales teams, basically a triage sales team and a more of a high ticket sales team for a higher level stuff. And then we work with a few high-end consulting companies on a retainer basis. So we have basically like a fractional CMO, super high level marketing. We have an innovations consulting firm that works with us on new innovations. And we're going to bring on basically a high-end like editorial consulting firm as well, like call it like a fractional kind of, I don't know. I don't know what you call them, but high-end editorial content strategy, bringing them on to work with us as well. So basically the way that we're structured is we have a director of each department and a director of each program who owns that program, who owns that department. Some of them have people underneath them. For example, the people who run our coaching programs have anywhere from 5 to 10 people underneath them each, right? The people who are like customer service, we have, a head of customer service who manages everything, but we have 2 other staff members who are trained to back her up when they need to.
Okay.
So she takes it, but then they can back her up if it's a heavy time or if she needs to take some time off. And then we have some high-end strategists who work with us, like I said, in kind of a fractional role. And then we have people who execute it. And the people who execute it, like our creative director, has a whole team of people that he outsources work to, but they're not on our staff. They're people who are, on Upwork, on that kind of thing.
I'm sure somebody listening to this is thinking like, wow, what a company. This is amazing. I have a 2-part question to wrap up this interview. First, did you ever envision getting to this point?
No.
So that's the first part of the question. But then the second part of the question is,
I never envisioned it and I never desired it. It was never a dream. It was never anything I thought that I wanted. It was never anything that I even knew could exist.
Yeah.
I grew up in a reasonably affluent Jewish society where every single adult that I knew was a lawyer, doctor, dentist, teacher, accountant, or businessman.
Yep.
My dad's a businessman. My mom's a teacher. My sister's a lawyer. My brother's a banker. My other brother's a teacher.
Yeah.
Like every single one of my friends is a lawyer, doctor, dentist, accountant, teacher, or businessman. Every single one. Yeah. I didn't even know that this world existed. Growing up, entrepreneurship wasn't cool. It meant you were unemployed. It's just, it was not, for the first year and a half that I had a website, I had checks sent to my parents' house because they didn't believe me that I could make money online. Yeah. I mean, it was not like they kind of get it now, but they still don't even really get it, right? They're just like, yeah, John's doing something, like he's good, he's off the payroll, right? Like they just don't really get it. And it's just, it just happened, right? Which is such an important part, I think, that I want to talk about more and more about, and I'm happy to talk about here, is it doesn't have to be a master plan. It doesn't have to happen fast. It doesn't have to happen on your first try. It wasn't any of those things for me. You should 100% have a backup plan. You should never go into debt. You should never do anything early on that has the potential to take you out of the game. If you can't afford to make a payment on something, because if it doesn't go 100% right, then you're going to have to quit all of your hopes and dreams. Yeah. Right? You should not do that. Like I stayed personal training for the first 2.5 years. I had a website until I started making enough money to be able to step away from it. That allowed me to take my time and build slower and figure stuff out and build an audience before I had a product, and not worry about having to make money to pay for my server costs or my website. Yeah. Because there's no way that I would have built it. And that's why I think a lot of people struggle now is they get into this point where they have to make money so early on that they never build up anything worth paying for.
Yeah. Too much pressure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say like, you know, this whole business, it just happened, but I'm assuming this business is the product of you putting one foot in front of the other day after day after day, working on yourself
And trying stuff,
and trying
trying stuff.
right? And not
Yeah.
being afraid to, you know, work on things. And some of them, they will never come to fruition, and others got you to where you are today. So second part of
I
this
love
question.
the idea of courage. Can I talk about courage for a minute?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I love the idea of courage. I think courage is fascinating. I think courage is super powerful because courage isn't something that people are born with. Courage is something that develops. Courage is something that develops when you fail, because fear, if you really understand fear, you realize, and you could look up the philosophy on this, I'm not making it up. You know, Seneca once said, if you wish to stave off fear, imagine that the worst that could happen most definitely will happen.
Yeah.
Because fear is not a rational thing. Fear is an irrational response to the unknown. When we fear things, it's because we haven't taken the time to understand them. And it seems like the worst case scenario, because we've never defined the worst case scenario, is going to be so unbelievably bad that we don't take action. It paralyzes us. But if you actually define the worst case scenario, you will, in almost every case, recognize that it's actually not so bad and you can withstand it. And that's a really empowering thing to happen, because now, you know, I always say, freedom is providing yourself the opportunity to fail. If you can fail, you can act. If you can act, you already have an advantage over many others. And the way to provide yourself that opportunity is to define your fear. And then once you do stuff and it doesn't work out, and you realize it's not so bad when it doesn't work out, because when you do something, when you attempt something, there's an almost 100% chance that it's not going to work the way that you intended. Yep. And a pretty damn good chance that it's going to work out in a way that you never could have anticipated if you'd ever tried. Mm-hmm. And so once you do stuff, you realize that even if it didn't go well, it ain't so bad. Mm-hmm. That gives you a lot more courage to do a lot more stuff. And so courage is just the result of doing stuff over and over and over and over again. That's how you build more courage. And the way to start that process is to define your fear, define the worst case scenario. And I think once you really understand that and put that into practice, you could just start doing stuff. You could start making stuff. Because, like, I don't know, what's the worst that can happen? Doesn't go well? Oh shit, you learned something. Like,
I feel that so much for the listener who is chained to stability right now. Like they have their job and they have their paycheck and their pension and all that stuff, and they feel that they are chained to that, and they want to do something else. They want to start a business like you have, but they are like wallowing in the fear, right? And I love that you say, just ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And I think Tim Ferriss says, do some fear casting, like literally write it out. And when you see that,
that's not bad. I like that. Fear casting. Is that what he says?
Yeah, it's like vision casting or dream casting. We all do that at the start of the new year. Why not say, okay, well, I do want to start this business. I'll do it responsibly, but what is the worst that could happen if, you know, I decide to quit my job, or if, you know, and project what these scenarios are, because it makes you realize, okay, maybe it's not so bad, and maybe I don't have to feel chained to this life that I'm unhappy with, because now the fears are in front of me. I see them, I've addressed them, I'm not avoiding them, and I'm going to have the courage to take action, even if the outcome isn't exactly as planned, because, you know, I've mapped out what.
As long as you've defined. Yeah, as long as you've defined, like, what's the worst outcome that can happen. I remember hearing somebody, obviously in our market, like it was fitness professional, was like, when I looked at what the worst that could happen was, I realized that I might have to go back to, if everything goes wrong that could possibly go wrong, like the odds of that happening are so slim, but like if everything goes wrong that could possibly go wrong, I realized that I might have to go back to sleeping on a mat in my gym. And you know what? I kind of miss those days.
Yeah. Right.
It's like,
Because
all right then.
that's what builds character. That's what the journey is about. And like, if you're not going to enjoy this journey towards building your next great idea, what are you doing? Like, you have to enjoy
Right.
the process of it. So yeah, that means sleeping on the gym mats and making that part of your story of how you got to where you are today. Then
I've slept on a lot of gym mats.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have slept on a lot of gym mats, that's for sure.
Sleepless nights, I guess. Oh, I guess back in your personal training days too. You're like, okay, I finished my last client at 10. I need to be here at whatever, 4:30
I
a.m.
don't think I ever slept overnight. No, I don't think I ever slept overnight because I always made sure to live pretty close to the gym.
Yeah.
Because I think reducing transit time is probably the most important thing you can do to improve productivity and mindset
Yeah.
and creative energy.
Oh my gosh.
And so I always spent more money living closer to where I work. And even where we built our office in Toronto, like 15-minute bike ride from home.
Yeah.
I'm not commuting ever.
Yeah.
I think commuting does so much damage
It does.
in so many ways to so many people. Aside from the time suck, it just zaps everything about you.
It does.
So I never slept overnight, but I took a lot of naps for sure. The first thing that I would do when we hired a new trainer, the first thing that I would teach them was how to build a bed out of mats and towels in the break room. That was actually lesson one.
That is
So there you go.
hilarious.
Yeah, that was lesson one.
Okay, second part, last question, and then I'm going to let you go. Now that you have got your business to where it is today, massive team, tons of success stories, and amazing people who have gone through your framework, do you have a new big vision? Like, obviously, what you've accomplished now is beyond what you ever thought possible. Now, as the visionary or the leader of this company, have you got that 5-year or 10-year, or
Yes.
do you just roll with it one day at a time?
Yes.
You do. Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The fitness industry is going to be fundamentally changed with the advent of artificial intelligence in the next 3 to 5 years.
You mean like Peloton or like the app, or
Nah.
do you mean with like virtual trainers?
No, not Peloton. Not Peloton, not virtual trainers. There is already computer programs, algorithms can build a better fitness program than about 98% of personal trainers.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I had no idea.
And it can also do things that personal trainers could never in a million years dream of doing. Computers are just better. Any task that requires any type of data, any task that requires any type of rote task, any type of learning that takes a long time. I mean, take just fitness programming, it's a mastery profession. Most trainers are actually pretty shit at it, like almost all of them. Unless you've been in the industry studying programming for 10 to 15 years minimum, you're not very good at programming. A computer program, though, is better than you. And it can also adapt on the fly way better than you, based off of some very simple inputs. As simple as, I wake up in the morning, I answer 3 questions talking about how good or not good I'm feeling. Yep. A program can automatically upgrade or downgrade for that day for me. Wow. Right? That's just one example. The entire fitness industry, the personal training industry, gyms, is all going to be turned on its head because of this simple fact. And trainers are going to be converted, and I haven't given good language to this yet, but call them fitness care professionals. Because there's going to be such a need for passionate people not to create programming, but deliver programming. To help people work through it, to be there when clients need it. This idea of hiring a trainer for $80 or $100 an hour, gone. It was never worth it. It's not worth it today. It was never worth it, and it'll be worth it even less in the future. But a gym membership at $200 or $300 a month, where you have, I don't call it artificial intelligence, I call it augmented intelligence, where you have trainers working with groups of clients at a time in intelligently built gyms with a back end of augmented intelligence, building all of the programming, building all of the results-based programming. That's where it's going. And that's what we're going to be training people to do. And I don't know whether it's going to be 3 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years, but I can tell you right now that commercial gyms are all going to be flipped on their head by it. They're still going to exist because in-home workouts suck, and people are not going to want to work out at home. I mean, there's a joke from amongst people who sell fitness equipment and infomercials that they have to have arms and they have to fold up because they're eventually going to turn into coat racks and end up underneath your bed. Like, it's just, I mean, no matter how good a digital community is, it doesn't matter. The majority of people are still going to want to go somewhere to exercise, but it's going to be largely augmented. I mean, Peloton just bought Precor, right? Because they know this. They're not stupid. They know that the in-home workout craze is not going to maintain. So they bought one of the big gym and hotel fitness equipment developers, Precor, so that they can put Peloton in gyms and in hotels.
Brilliant. Wow.
That happened like 2 days ago.
I didn't know about that. And
So,
I mean, for people who are feeling, I guess, kind of like shattered, like, well, what is the point if artificial intelligence is just going to?
Because there's more opportunity than there ever was. There will be more jobs created, more business, and more of a desire for what you do, and you'll be able to do more of what you do best with less pressure over all of the stuff that you already know you're not doing a good job on. Speak to 100 personal trainers and ask them if they think that they're good at programming. 98 of them will say no. And they're probably right.
And would you agree that the special sauce that that all people who could, if the programming can be replaced by artificial intelligence, would you say the one thing, the special sauce, is the creativity and like the character of the deliverer of the program? Because
it's the care. It's the care.
The level of care.
It's being empathetic. It's 100%. One of the things, I mean, this is all industries, right? This is not just the fitness industry. Artificial intelligence in the next 5 to 10 years is going to just like some industries are just completely screwed. Like industries that don't include humans that much, like radiology, for example, financial services, like real estate, like they're basically just going to be gone. But any industry where there is an element of care, like the medical industry, doctors by and large, probably not 5 to 10 years, maybe 10 to 20, doctors by and large aren't going to exist the way that they exist right now. They're going to be changed into care professionals. There's going to be more of a need of them. We're not going to have to spend as much training them. The reason why there's not enough doctors right now and care isn't sufficient is because it costs so much to train doctors. Right? There's going to be more of a need for them. There's going to be way more of them. And the level of care is going to be so much higher than it ever was. They're going to be able to spend time with you in ways that they never would. Right? And so the fitness industry is going to be the same. There's going to be way more jobs in the fitness and health industries because all of the stuff that humans are not good at, like technology, scale, automation, artificial intelligence doesn't replace humans, it optimizes them. It optimizes the single thing that makes us human, which is love, which is compassion. And so dive into that. Don't try to learn the hard science of what you do because a computer can do it better already than you can.
Wow, good advice. Gives me a lot to think about too in my own business. Wow, we could have gone so many different directions with this show, but I think we can put a stamp on it there and wrap this up for now. You are obviously a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure the listeners may want to connect with you or learn more about you. So where is the best place for them to find you?
If you are interested in podcasts and you're interested in the fitness industry,
Yeah.
we've got a podcast called The Online Trainer Show. It is irreverent. It's half comedy, half business podcast.
I love it.
So definitely come. Oh my God, it's so funny. It's different. Don't expect it to be like an interview podcast. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So I'd really love for you to join us there. It's called The Online Trainer Show, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are a personal trainer, Personal Trainer Development Center website is where you can find everything. We've got over 1,000 free articles. I've written 11 books. That's where you'll find the certification, the coaching programs, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And actually, I teach at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, and some of my students have taken your program in
Cool.
conjunction with going to CSNN. And a lot of them say it is kind of a match made in heaven to have a wonderful wellness offering. So definitely big
Yep.
kudos to you for bringing this vision to life. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you.